don't want to spend the bulk of my time trying to get you to respond to letters that we send you, specifically to Homeland Security. I have a problem when I send you a letter in July asking for some basic information, and I get the response last night after hours, to which most answers are, we'll get you this information later. You know, my colleagues, I think in a very sincere way, are trying to point out that there are less, this is a less of, visa overstays are less of a problem, but when I asked the Department of Homeland Security to provide a document describing the total number of overstays, the response was, Homeland Security will provide more specific information on overstays by the end of the calendar year. I asked this question in July. This is the answer you gave me last night. I don't know how anybody can make the case that this is less of a problem or even more of a problem when Homeland Security can't even tell me what the numbers were in 2009. I also don't understand from Homeland Security why when I issue a letter on August 26th, I get no response. I've had no response. Mr. Woods, why do I not get answers to the questions we ask?
Chairman, I'll take your concerns back to the Department.
No, you're the representative from Homeland Security. What is intolerable to this committee, and it's happened on both sides of the aisle, is we don't get answers to very basic questions. Why do you don't tell me you're just going to carry the message back. I carried the message to the Secretary and to the Department. Why don't you have answers to those questions? Why do these letters go unanswered?
It's my understanding that your July letter was answered last evening, and I apologize for the delay in that letter. It went through a lengthy clearance process. There were many questions to answer, and it's my understanding
most of the answers are, we're going to get you the answers later.
It's my understanding that the Office of Immigration Statistics is committed to publishing the overstay rates by the end of this calendar year. It falls under the
I asked for them back in 2000. Do you have the numbers for 2009?
I do not have the numbers for 2009 right this time. From what I understand at the time with you.
What I want you to understand and take back, look, I'm sure you're a very nice gentleman. You're the person, though, that your agency put up here in front. Hey, it's nothing personal. But when I ask for this in writing, in letter, trying to be nice, polite, give you plenty of time, in July, it should be a clue that when we come and have a hearing in November, that I might ask you this question. And that's, we've taken up half my time trying to get you to do what we asked you to do politely, just in writing, from what the statistics are in 2009. This is what's so terribly frustrating about trying to interact with this administration, is the lack of information about this. Now, let me go to the Department of State here, Mr. Romatowski. Help me understand this definition of, you know, in order to get a border crossing card from Mexico, these are for Mexican citizens to come to the United States, they have to demonstrate ties to Mexico. We believe as a government that they'll actually want to go back to Mexico. Can you define what that is? Because I am having a hard time finding what the definition and the leniency that maybe somebody from the Department of State is going to give somebody to get one of these border crossing cards. What does it take?
Mr. Chairman, we evaluate each and every visa application on its own individual merits. And as you pointed out, the law requires each applicant to demonstrate that they are not an intending immigrant. So the consular officer will evaluate that applicant's case based on their circumstances.
Do you know the average time that the application is reviewed?
It varies by country.
No, we're talking about just Mexico, because I'm talking about just border crossing cards, which are only available
in Mexico. That's correct.
In Mexico. So it doesn't vary by country. It's only Mexico.
Okay. For Mexico, the average time would be in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 minutes for a consular interview.
And what documentation is required to make this?
What's required is our DS-160 electronic visa application form, and the consular officer is entitled to request any other document that he or she needs in order to make a decision.
As a minimum, what documentation do you need? As a Mexican, I pretend a Mexican comes up and wants to fill out this application, what documentation do they need to provide as a minimum?
As a minimum, as I said, the application is the only required document. If the consular officer doubts the applicant's answers,
so there's no passport, no.
Oh, a passport is required, yes, in addition to the application form.
Birth certificates?
Birth certificates are not required, unless the officer has reason to doubt the identity of the individual that's standing before them.
So they must have a Mexican-issued passport.
That's correct.
In order, what is the opportunity, or what are the latitude that they had to waive that requirement?
A passport cannot be waived. A Mexican citizen has to travel to the U.S. with a passport and a border crossing card. And
my last question, I've gone over my time here, unfortunately, and we're going to come back with several rounds here. I promise you that. Why such a dramatic increase? We have nearly 300,000 plus, more than 300,000 border crossing cards issued in the Obama administration than the Bush administration. I just want to know why.
I think there are several reasons for that, Mr. Chairman. Visa demand, border crossing card demand in Mexico tends to be cyclical because the cards are issued for a period of 10 years. And when you come to the end of a 10-year period, a larger group of applicants are renewing their cards. Another reason is that overall travel demand to the United States has been increasing. We're seeing that in a number of countries around the world. Private industry and cities, states, and towns have been heavily promoting the U.S. as a tourist destination. Demand dropped drastically after the 9/11 attacks, and it's now recovering. Finally, with respect to Mexico, initially border crossing cards were only issued in, were mainly issued in our 5 border consulates. And the consulates and the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City issued standard visas. But now Mexico is converted to issuing the border crossing card, B1, B2 visa card exclusively. So you're going to see, simply because we've shifted more of the demand in Mexico to these cards. And the reason for that is the card helps CBP at the border because it contains an RFID chip, which enables the CBP officer to get that data as a car drives up to the border.
And perhaps we'll have time to explore why the rejection rates are so different between the two administrations. But I'll now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts.